Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. I'm here with a little chat about what we can learn about certain composers' intentions from their score markings. Now, this is a little tricky topic because, I don't want to sit here and hold up scores and stick them in the camera and whatnot. But there are certain recurring words that composers use that are actually fairly unique to their own scores, to the way that they think about music and the interpretation of their music. And I have 5 very simple one-word indications that tell us something kind of interesting about the composers who use them. So let's just get right to it and get to the list. Number 1 is Elgar. Elgar's big word, if you look at his scores, is nobilmente, nobly. In other words, he wants his music to sound noble. Now, you know all of those nobilmente tunes in Elgar. There's a bazillion of them. The motto tune at the beginning of the First Symphony, the slow movement climax in the Second Symphony, the Enigma variations and all this stuff. Elgar loves nobilmente. Now, the real question and the interesting question is whether, because the word is there, that's how the music sounds. Is that what we associate with noble music? I actually think Elgar's pretty good at it, and his nobilmentes are pretty clear, and actually he doesn't even need to tell us, because what is a conductor supposed to do? To conduct nobly. He's telling us what the music sounds like, and in terms of how the artists actually play it. Does it mean slow down? Does it mean speed up? What do you do? Well, that's just wishful thinking on the part of the composer. It's up to the performers to realize the indication, and it's up to the music itself to embody it. So when you're listening to Elgar, try and ask yourself, if you want to check a score, you can, of course, is that a nobilmente or is it something else? Dvorak is next. This is one of the more interesting ones, actually, because it's a very unique concept. The word is grandioso. Grandioso, grandiose. Now, most of the time, that's a negative quality. In many respects, we think of it as terms of pomposity and bombast and bragging and stuff like that. We don't think of grandiose as something that's healthy, which it certainly is in Dvorak's case. Dvorak uses grandioso whenever he gets to a big climax, or often, whenever, but often he gets to a big climax and he'll say grandiose. Donald Francis Tovey, the great English music critic and musicologist, said that when Dvorak says grandioso, he's talking about the grandeur of the Christmas tree. In other words, something that's cheerful and enjoyable and approachable and fun, and it is. That's really how Dvorak uses it. He wasn't really given to bombast and posturing and that kind of thing, but he uses the term in his own personal way. Composers tend to do that. After Dvorak, we have Mahler. Oh, yes. Now, Mahler's scores are famous for being some of the most detailed ever written. He loves to write footnotes to the conductor, Anmerkung for Dirigent. He writes things about what they're supposed to do. But Mahler is the king of Nicht. Don't. It's don't this or that. Usually it's Nicht Eilen or Nicht Schleppend. Don't hurry or don't drag. You see these indications constantly in Mahler's scores. And Mahler even explained what he meant by it, because it was rather unusual in its time. He said most of the time people will write, speed up or slow down. He said, but if you write speed up or slow down, conductors are going to go crazy. They're going to go way too fast or way too slow. So he said, what I've done is to say, don't hurry, because that means they'll slow down, but only a little bit. And don't drag, which means, okay, they'll keep it moving. Maybe they'll speed up, but only a little bit. Composers are always trying very hard to find these sort of fractional values for slight increases in speed or slight nuances and expression without having grotesque exaggeration. And of course, Mahler came up with this particular solution, and he peppered his scores liberally with the Nicht indication. Don't go fast, don't go slow, don't do this. And actually, other composers have done the same thing. One of the most famous is the first movement of Rachmaninoff's symphonic dances, which is simply marked non-allegro, which is great. What do you do with non-allegro? It means don't go fast. How slow do you go? Well, it's hard to say. The whole point is that it is fast, but not too much so. It's, of course, up to the interpreters to make the decision. Another very interesting and very, very common indication is in the works of Vaughan Williams. Vaughan Williams is famous for concluding most of his works that end quietly, and like all of the symphonies do, except number 4, for example, and 8 actually, but most of them do. And his slow movements and quiet bits with Niente. Niente is Italian for nothing. You know, he'll write a decrescendo and then Niente. He wants you to hear the sound fade away into nothingness. And that could be argued as one of his more sort of, transcendental qualities. The idea of doing a fade away to zero. It's very, very interesting. All of those pieces like the London Symphony and the Sea Symphony and these things, they disappear into the cosmic void, the endless ocean of nothingness. So Vaughan Williams is the Niente guy. And last but not least, and this is just a very quick little survey, maybe we'll get into it, in more depth if you're interested, is Wagner. Yes, Wagner. Wagner's big indication or interesting indication, a personal thing, is Dehnen or Gedehnt. That means stretched. I mean, I've always kind of wondered what that means in terms of musical interpretation. To stretch a phrase. That's, it would suggest, for example, rubato in Italian, the robbed time, where you take a little time here so you can put it there. It increases the feeling of fluidity. And as we know, Wagner was all about stretching things out to ridiculous lengths, but also about fluidity of rhythm. He wanted an unbroken stream of endless melody. He wasn't really into rhythm, strictly demarcated rhythm anyway. Even Siegfried's funeral music, which everyone calls Siegfried's funeral march, is actually a Siegfried's funeral music. It's not a march, it's a music, because it doesn't really go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I mean, that's not Wagner's thing. So when he says stretch it, it means stretch out the phrase a little bit. Just give it some wishy-washy fluidity as you join one thing to the next to keep the music constantly in flux, because Wagner liked flux, as we well know. So there you have it. That's it. Just 5 very different composers who had 5 personal ways of marking their scores that, if you read scores and you look at scores, you're going to come across. And their music, of course, reflects what their verbal intentions are. And we can gain a lot by looking at those verbal intentions. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.